He waited 999 years for evolution, only to fail at the last 1%. Now he's been reborn as the weakest baby dragon. Can the weakest baby dragon become the Dragon King?
A violent storm turned the sea as giant waves crashed against each other, rising and falling with highly destructive force. Lightning repeatedly tore through the dark sky, illuminating the absolute chaos below in brief flashes of blinding light. In the middle of this battlefield, a brave warrior stood his ground against a dark, towering beast. Despite his determination, the enemy's spear proved far too powerful. The man suddenly flew through the air while holding his heavily enchanted weapon. With one desperate final effort, he pushed forward and fiercely drove the sharp blade straight into the shining crystals situated on top of the giant dragon's head, shattering the surrounding magical energy. The monstrous figure radiated a dangerous aura as beams of light shot out from its glowing red eyes. The impact triggered a violent explosion of reddish crystals that scattered across the battlefield. Even though he was fatally injured, the protagonist forced himself to rise slightly, a blood-stained smile forming on his pale, exhausted face. Through the smoke, his defeated enemy looked surprisingly satisfied with this incredible duel, though his massive hands were completely broken from the clash. The dying warrior watched closely, thinking about his impending divine ascension that was now permanently ruined, filling his remaining thoughts with deep, bitter hatred toward this tragic conclusion of his life. His mind drifted back to the beautiful blue dragon that had needed only one more year to complete its ultimate celestial ascension. Now that giant creature lay utterly defeated on the ground, never imagining that it would make the fatal mistake of destroying its own vessel. Filled with immense fury, the beast questioned everything. The warrior, now falling onto his knees, was mocked as a helpless fool for his reckless actions. In its floating dragon form, the angry creature demanded to know what he had gained from all this destruction. Yet, the man calmly spoke with his enemy, explaining he only acted to repay a kindness received long ago. As he turned his face toward the storm-filled sky, he made it clear that this alone had been his final wish. At that moment, a mysterious voice echoed from nowhere, asking about a true name for the dragon. The entity responded with a sudden glow, questioning what name the distant voice was referring to. In the very next instant, a massive fiery explosion erupted from the water, consuming everything around it in a massive wave of absolute destruction. From the darkness that followed, a spiritual figure slowly emerged into an endless, empty void. The floating soul looked around in pure confusion, entirely uncertain whether this reality was real. Even after such a catastrophic confrontation, the floating spirit could somehow still feel its own heartbeat. Despite losing its core source of energy, there was still some power remaining within its body. The being questioned where it had been brought, declaring that sealing its power would not be enough to make it surrender. Refusing to accept this strange fate, the spiritual entity gathered what remained of its strength, desperate for one final effort. It focused intensely, channeling all its remaining internal energy into a single point to make a fierce rebellion. With a powerful burst, it successfully shattered the magical barrier holding it in place completely. As the energy dissipated, the spirit landed heavily on the ground. It suddenly noticed that the floor beneath its feet felt very wet and cold. Turning its head to investigate the surroundings, the entity was completely stunned to see massive, towering mountains of gold and countless valuable treasures scattered in every single direction imaginable. The sheer scale of the treasure haul was overwhelming. Carefully observing the area, the entity noticed a chest overflowing with precious jewels. Right in the middle of this immense fortune, it spotted a strange ancient stone monument erected high above the coins, with mysterious words carefully carved into its smooth reflective surface. The stone message spoke of a unique treasure and wished happiness to whoever read it. It explicitly mentioned raising a child, which made the creature wonder deeply. Out of respect, the being touched the stone, but as it did, it suddenly started to realize that something felt extremely strange about its own physical form. Turning toward a reflective surface, it saw its own image and immediately sensed a massive problem. Its face looked completely different. The creature examined its new paws, surprisingly discovering that they were small, short, and covered in soft fur. Its body had magically transformed into an incredibly round and chubby little baby dragon. Still confused, it pinched its cheeks, trying to understand what was happening. Looking again at its reflection in a gold coin, the realization finally struck. It had been reborn into a much smaller body. The creature stared in disbelief, unable to accept that it had become such a weak and seemingly helpless being. Slowly, it began to understand that this strange process was what humans referred to as reincarnation. Even though it did not fully comprehend everything that had occurred, it knew it needed to adapt quickly. Deciding to focus on survival, the small creature began searching the room for anything that might help it. Realizing its previous grand form was gone, the creature decided to face reality and completely stopped resisting its current state. Accepting this new life, the tiny dragon began to wander around the massive hall. It checked the piles of treasure carefully, wondering what kind of powerful magical items were stored inside this mountain. As it examined the vast collection, it noted that the owner had an incredibly strange taste in weapons. One shield carried a petrification curse that activated simply by being looked at. Another item had the ability to throw its victim into an endless inferno of hunger, making it seem like an ancient curse. There was also a mysterious wine bottle that could steal a person's voice and bind their legs, though the creature didn't consider that dangerous. Frustration began to build as it realized most items were impractical. It wondered whether the collection had been created merely to balance opposing spiritual energies within the hall. However, its attention was suddenly drawn to a small red jewel lying among the scattered coins. Curious, the creature looked upward, wondering if the gem had fallen from above. That was when it discovered a massive chest completely filled with even more shining treasures, leaving the small creature totally stunned by the sight. Its sparkling eyes grew wide with extreme excitement as it celebrated internally, feeling as though it had just stumbled upon an incredible fortune. Looking more closely, it realized these were magical stones infused with raw elemental power. Suddenly, the tiny dragon spotted a beautiful purple jewel whose dark aura closely resembled the immense power it once possessed in life. Without any hesitation, it wrapped its small chubby paws around the purple gem and decided to keep it, holding it tightly as if it was something irreplaceable. As it examined the jewel more carefully, it noticed that a golden ornament attached to the top was getting in the way of its natural flow of ancient energy. Tilting its small head, it used both its tiny claws and teeth, struggling hard to pry the golden accessory off. It tugged with all its strength, but its small body made the task difficult. With a sudden release, the ornament came loose, causing the little dragon to lose balance and fall backward onto its back immediately. The purple gem slipped from its paws during the clumsy tumble. The tiny being lost its footing and rolled down the treasure mountain, coins scattering everywhere. After finally coming to a stop, feeling slightly bruised all over, it complained internally that its previous powerful dragon form would never have suffered from such a simple and humiliating fall. Suddenly, the entire mountain of gold began to tremble violently. Coins and jewels slid down in all directions as the ground itself shifted. The purple jewel on the floor began to glow intensely, and the creature immediately felt an overwhelming, terrifying pressure emanating from the shadows, making the air inside the grand treasure hole turn freezing cold. A sense of fear rose as a blue energy distorted the space around it, as if reality was twisting. A massive glowing portal suddenly opened nearby, spinning rapidly with violent force. Sensing immediate danger, the tiny dragon gathered its remaining courage and prepared to release its own legendary red pressure toward the mysterious and dangerous teleportation circle. The tiny creature bared its small fangs, determined to protect its precious jewel from whatever was coming through the portal. But before it could unleash its red aura, a sharp golden claw slowly emerged from within the swirling energy. The sheer size of that single claw carried a clear and unmistakable intent to strike down anything. A massive blue eye appeared inside the portal, observing the tiny creature closely with a heavy, unyielding gaze. Suddenly, an immense golden dragon stepped completely out from the swirling portal and stood directly before the small being. The legendary beast radiated a majestic light that instantly illuminated every single corner of the grand, ancient treasure hall. The tiny creature faced the giant dragon boldly, wondering if this grand entrance was merely a cheap attempt to intimidate a small and innocent newborn hatchling. With a determined expression, it prepared itself for a fierce fight, letting out what it intended to be a terrifying roar, making it clear that it would not surrender its treasure. The golden dragon paused, clearly confused by the tiny noise. Moving closer, it realized the creature was just a hatchling. With a gentle motion, it used its massive tail to lift the tiny being off the ground. Suspended high in the air on the tail, the helpless hatchling felt completely terrified, trembling with tears in its eyes. At that exact moment, a soft light began to glow, and a calm, soothing female voice filled the space. The golden dragon's massive form began to shift gracefully, transforming into a beautiful woman with long golden hair and a lovely dress. She gently held the scared little creature in her arms with a warm, reassuring expression. The beautiful golden-hair woman gently introduced herself as Christina to the confused baby creature. Her voice sounded incredibly calm and warm in this cold hall, comforting his soul. While the little dragon was still trying to process everything around him, he silently wondered if she was actually giving him a meaningful new name to carry. Christina carefully placed him back on the wet ground and observed his physical condition for a quiet moment. Nodding softly, she checked whether he was completely all right before mentioning that he must be quite hungry. The tiny being paused, remembering that in his past life as a warrior, he could easily go months without food. But things were completely different now in this fragile body, and an overwhelming hunger suddenly struck him with massive force. His little stomach let out a loud, unmistakable growl that echoed in the empty room. Seeing his desperate need, Christina raised her white hand and used her magical power to summon a warm milk bottle from thin air. The mysterious baby bottle materialized instantly, appearing solid and radiating a comforting warmth within her gentle grasp. Smiling softly at the small dragon, she prepared to open the container, her deliberate movements remaining slow and reassuring to avoid scaring him. The hungry creature watched her actions closely, his tiny tail twitching with great anticipation and curiosity. As soon as the plastic cap was completely removed, a rich, soft, and inviting scent instantly spread through the cool air. The little creature's sharp senses immediately picked up the sweet, familiar smell, causing a bright flicker of pure joy to appear in his wide eyes. He quickly realized that the delicious scent was that of warm milk. His mouth watered uncontrollably as his chubby body reacted instinctively to the wonderful promise of fresh food. Despite his desperate hunger, his mind became conflicted, and he hesitated to take a step forward. A part of him clung to his former pride as a mighty warrior, making the small dragon want to drink, but afraid to approach. Seeing his clear hesitation, Christina assumed he refused the milk and slowly began to move the bottle away. The moment the food started leaving his reach, sheer panic set in. Forgetting his pride, the little creature leapt forward with all his strength, grabbing the bottle tightly with his paws and eagerly drinking the sweet liquid without thinking. Christina watched him quietly, her soft expression noting how truly famished the young hatchling must have been. To the little dragon, the rich drink felt completely unfamiliar at first, but as he tasted it properly, immense surprise filled his soul. He had never imagined milk could taste this good, lowering his gaze shyly under her focused attention. Christina referred to him softly as a little one, her kind tone filled with endless warmth. After a brief pause, she extended her hand toward his round body, offering him an important choice. She spoke gently about the vast world outside, mentioning that it was filled with many incredible wonders and delicious food waiting to be experienced together. The tiny being did not fully understand every word she said, but he easily grasped the core essence of her speech. He realized that she was warmly inviting him to leave this vault and go with her. He thought about it carefully, acknowledging that she did not seem like a bad person after saving his life today from danger. He looked around the massive hall, noting that this cold place offered nothing but useless piles of gold. More importantly, his newborn dragon body was currently weak and highly vulnerable. Surviving alone in such an unprotected condition would be extremely dangerous for him, forcing his logical mind to weigh the practical benefits of accepting her generous offer immediately. After a moment of silent consideration, the small creature finally decided to compromise with reality. He slowly pushed the purple gem forward, convincing himself that this choice had nothing to do with the sweet milk. Stepping closer to Christina, he reached out with his tiny claws and tightly grabbed her long dress, indicating he would go along. Seeing this intelligent gesture, Christina's beautiful face brightened noticeably, clearly pleased with his final decision. She gently leaned down, scooping his small, round body up into her arms with great care. Holding the creature securely against her lap, she expressed quiet gratitude, thanking him for surviving the ordeal and finally being born into this new world. Hearing her thanks, the dragon felt confused but realized her emotional words belonged to the original soul of this body. He felt a deep sense of gratitude toward that departed spirit for this second chance. With that peaceful thought, the little creature raised his paws and formally handed the precious purple stone over to his new guardian as a gift. Christina looked at the sparkling jewel for a quiet moment, wondering if she should keep it safe on his behalf. Instead of answering her, the tiny being moved closer and snuggled against her chest, wanting to comfort his guardian. She smiled warmly, hugging his small body securely as she turned around and finally carried him out of the vault. Resting comfortably on her steady shoulder, the small creature looked ahead and reflected on everything that had happened. In his heart, he made a firm promise that he would grow much stronger to ensure no one could ever harm him again. He resolved to take full advantage of every single opportunity that came his way during this reincarnation. Sometime later, the scene shifted to a peaceful bedroom where the little creature was sleeping soundly. He lay directly on top of a soft bed, completely surrounded by scattered, shimmering jewels. His small chubby body rested comfortably under the dim light, and he slept heavily for days, thoroughly exhausted from the intense events of his magical rebirth. Gradually, a full month passed by, and the young dragon woke up feeling completely refreshed. Now sitting quietly on the bed, the small creature decided to close his eyes and begin to gather energy. Even though this current body was totally different from his previous human form, he had finally become accustomed to its unique internal paths. As he focused inward to guide his spiritual power, he suddenly noticed Christina standing nearby, casually performing high-level magic to organize the room. Watching her control the glowing particles effortlessly, he realized that advanced sorcery was simply a natural part of this world. This discovery meant he no longer needed to train his traditional human energy center anymore. He could focus entirely on cultivating his lower core instead, which gave him a natural advantage that left him quite satisfied with his peaceful life. However, despite these amazing benefits, one constant problem bothered him. A strange, glowing little light spirit with delicate wings hovered nearby at all times, staring directly down at him without ever leaving his side. The small dragon couldn't help but glare back at this annoying flying observer, growing increasingly frustrated by its constant presence. The tiny entity never seemed to disappear, not even for a single moment during his private meditation sessions. It even floated closer to poke his nose playfully, making him wonder if the creature ever slept at all. He remembered that Christina had summoned this monitoring spirit out of deep concern for his safety, but its presence created a difficult obstacle. Because of it, he couldn't perform any physical training without being noticed. Frustrated, the young dragon closed his eyes and decided to gather energy once again, focusing his growing power directly within his chest. He had even tried to sneak away from the bedroom once, hopping carefully across the floor to move quietly without attracting the spirit's attention. But every time he attempted to escape, the annoying light entity would immediately fly out to alert Christina. She would quickly come inside and stop him before he could get anywhere near the door. Through continuous secret meditation, his internal energy kept growing steadily, becoming stronger with each passing day. Finally, with a sharp look in his eyes, he decided to try a direct approach. He resolved to gather his gathered mana and use a powerful teleportation spell to escape her sight.